To the world, she was always just Fergie, the fun-loving, free-spirited duchess who blew into the stuffy House of Windsor like a gust of fresh air. For decades, the tabloids have had a field day, painting her as a reckless spender, a royal rebel, and a woman of spectacularly bad judgment who was ultimately cast out after one too many public scandals. But the story most people don't know is the one that started long before the palaces and the press. It's a story of a private heartbreak in a young girl's life that would arguably define her public one, creating a pattern of behavior that seemed to lead to her ruin time and time again. While the world points to scandal after scandal as the reason for her royal exile, the truth may lie in a much more personal story, a deep-seated pattern of seeking approval that has, in many ways, been her downfall. Sarah Ferguson's public life has often felt like a highlight reel of controversies that have both defined and nearly destroyed her royal career. That initial girl-next-door charm that captivated a prince and a nation was quickly overshadowed by a reputation for being a bit too much and a shocking lack of discretion. The fairy tale really started to unravel in August of 1992. While separated but still married to Prince Andrew, the Duke of York, Fergie was photographed topless in the south of France, with her American financial advisor, John Bryan, kissing her toes. The pictures were a global humiliation. Splashed across the front pages, they were seen as an unforgivable breach of royal protocol. Prince Philip, her father-in-law, was reportedly furious, and it put the Queen in an impossible position. That one event damaged Fergie's standing within the family for years. After her divorce, she wandered in the royal wilderness, but the scandals didn't stop, they just evolved. If the toe-sucking incident was a crime of passion, her next major blunder was about cold, hard cash. In 2010, she was secretly filmed by an undercover reporter who was posing as a wealthy businessman. In the video, Ferguson appears to offer access to her ex-husband, Prince Andrew, in exchange for £500,000. £500,000 when you can. To me, she was recorded saying, "Can open any door you want." The backlash was immediate and brutal. She later told Oprah Winfrey that she was in the gutter at that moment and had probably been drinking, but the damage was done. It solidified a story that had been brewing for years, that she was a woman desperate for money, willing to sell her royal connections. For the public, and more importantly the palace, it looked like a pattern of behavior that wasn't just embarrassing, but a direct threat to the monarchy's integrity. These scandals became the public reason for her exile. They were brazen, humiliating, and entirely of her own making. But you could also see them as symptoms of a much deeper problem. Of all her catastrophic mistakes, none would prove more toxic than her connection to the convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. This wasn't just a brief acquaintance. It was a friendship she actively maintained even after his 2008 conviction for soliciting a minor. When troves of documents related to Epstein were released, they painted a damning picture of their association. In emails sent after his conviction, Ferguson's praise was deeply disturbing. She referred to him as the brother I always wished for and a steadfast, generous, and supreme friend. And these weren't just empty words. At a time of serious financial trouble, she accepted £15,000 from him to help pay off debts. In one bizarre 2010 email, she even wrote, "I am at your service. Just marry me." While Sarah has never been accused of any criminal wrongdoing in connection with Epstein, the moral bankruptcy of the association is staggering. Even after she publicly disavowed him in 2011, calling her involvement a gigantic error of judgment, leaked emails later revealed she sent him a fawning apology just weeks after. Her spokesperson later claimed the email was sent under duress, following threats from Epstein. This connection is the stain that just won't wash out. It has not only damaged her reputation, but has become tangled up in Prince Andrew's own downfall. As Andrew was stripped of his titles and faced the threat of eviction from their shared home, Royal Lodge, Sarah Ferguson was caught in the same storm. The association has become professionally radioactive, incinerating almost any hope she had of a permanent return to public life. In the chaotic aftermath of her many scandals, the blame game began. Tabloid headlines, always hungry for a villain, floated a juicy rumor. Fergie was blaming a senior royal for her problems. Anonymous insiders whispered to magazines that the Duchess felt betrayed by Queen Camilla. According to these unnamed sources, Fergie, once a friend of Camilla's, would unload her anger after a couple of drinks, bitter that the family had abandoned her. It's a classic royal soap opera story, female rivalry and betrayal in the palace. But that narrative, based entirely on unnamed sources, distracts from what may be a more tragic story. Other sources, reportedly close to the Duchess, have painted a very different picture, one not of blaming others, but of crushing self-torment. The Daily Mail has reported that far from pointing fingers, Sarah Ferguson is going around blaming herself. This is a recurring theme in her story. It's not about blaming Camilla. It's about a woman who seems to be consumed by regret, spiraling into a cycle of what-ifs. She is reportedly tormented by the consequences of her actions, not just for herself, but for her ex-husband and their daughters, who now face their own kind of royal isolation. This tendency towards self-blame seems to be a psychological blueprint that's been with her for most of her life. While the tabloids hunt for a scapegoat, the truth might be that Sarah Ferguson has always found one in the mirror. Her biggest enemy, the one responsible for her perpetual exile, might not be a rival royal. It might just be herself. To understand the real reason for Sarah Ferguson's cycle of scandal and self-sabotage, some believe you have to go back in time. Long before the press and the palaces, she was a young girl living when Sarah was a young teenager. Her mother, Susan Barantes, did something almost unthinkable in their social circle. She left. She fell in love with a professional polo player from Argentina and moved across the world, leaving her two daughters behind in England. For a young Sarah, this abandonment was a devastating event. It's been argued that it created a deep-seated insecurity and a relentless craving for approval that would become the driving force behind many of her future decisions. Some psychological theories suggest that this kind of early trauma can lead to a lifetime of internalizing blame. A child in that situation, who has no power, might conclude that it must be their fault. This need to take responsibility, to absorb conflict just to keep the peace, can become a survival mechanism. As an adult, this might show up as a constant need for external validation and a catastrophic lack of judgment when it comes to choosing friends. If you look at the pattern of her life through this lens, the seemingly bizarre scandals start to make a sort of painful sense. Her extravagance and money troubles could be seen not just as greed, but as a desperate attempt to feel secure and worthy. Her desperate need for friendship might have made her an easy target for manipulative people. Her fawning emails to Jeffrey Epstein, calling him the brother I always wished for, might not just be the words of a foolish woman. One could interpret them as the words of someone with a deep-seated need for a stable male figure, a need born from a childhood where that stability vanished. Of course, it's just an interpretation to draw a straight line from her mother's departure to her friendship with a predator. But Ferguson herself has spoken about the pain of this abandonment, and the psychological pattern is hard to ignore. For a brief, shining moment, it looked like Sarah Ferguson had finally found her way back. After years of being excluded from the most private royal events, she received an invitation to spend Christmas at Sandringham in 2023. She even joined the family for Easter in 2024 for the first time in over 30 years. It was seen as a miraculous comeback, a sign that she was slowly being let back into the fold. But her reputation remains incredibly fragile. The Epstein connection is a ghost that constantly haunts her, threatening any progress she makes. Every time new details emerge, the story comes roaring back. This was seen in February 2026, when her own charity, Sarah's Trust, announced it would close for the foreseeable future. A spokesperson said the decision had been in the works for months, but the announcement came just days after a new batch of Epstein files was released. Around the same time, it was confirmed that 7 other charities, including the Teenage Cancer Trust and the British Heart Foundation, had ended their relationships with her. Then, in March 2026, the York City Council held an extraordinary meeting and voted unanimously to revoke the Freedom of the City of York honor that she had been given back in 1987. The debate reportedly took less than 10 minutes. She has largely vanished from public view, with reports of her having to delay book deals and spending time at wellness retreats. Her life today is a painful echo of 1996, the year of her divorce. But now, with her name forever tied to Epstein, she has lost public honor, her charitable purpose, and her future is uncertain. The comeback is over. The exile is no longer temporary. It feels permanent. The inner workings of the royal family are a complex web of public duty and private turmoil. If you find this exploration into the forces that shape royal lives fascinating, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell icon. You won't want to miss our next look at the real stories behind the headlines. So, what is the real reason for Sarah Ferguson's royal exile? The easy answer is the scandals, the toe-sucking, the cash for access, and the unforgivable friendship with Jeffrey Epstein. These are the public signs of her downfall, a series of self-inflicted wounds that made her position impossible. But the real, more tragic reason may not be the scandals themselves, but the psychological pattern that produced them. Her story is a tragedy of cause and effect, where the trauma of childhood abandonment may have created a lifelong need for validation that left her vulnerable to exploitation and prone to catastrophic errors. Her exile isn't just a punishment from the rigid institution she married into. It's the end result of a battle she seems to have been fighting with herself for over 50 years. The central conflict of her life has been the clash between the fun-loving Fergie the world first met and the insecure, blame-prone Sarah she might be in private. In the end, is she a victim of a traumatic past or a chancer who just ran out of luck? Perhaps the most tragic truth of all is that she may be both. A woman whose own wounds led her to repeatedly orchestrate her own demise, leaving her in a permanent state of exile, not just from the royal family, but from the redemption she so desperately seems to crave.